All right, let's talk about something that I know has driven some of you absolutely crazy. You're trying to connect SailPoint to Azure Government with the standard Entra SSO connector, and you just hit a brick wall. Well, if that's you, you are in the perfect spot because today we are zeroing in on the one simple fix that solves this super common headache. Let's get right into it.
So, you've got everything set up, you're following all the steps, but the connection just keeps failing. It really feels like it should work, doesn't it? But, every time it fails, that can mean project delays, compliance issues. It's a real problem. The whole issue really comes down to this one question. See, your connector is basically knocking on the front door of public Azure, but Azure Government doesn't live there. It's in a totally separate, way more secure building down the street.
And to really get why this is happening, you've got to understand that Microsoft doesn't just have one Azure. To meet the really intense security and compliance needs of government agencies, they built Azure Government. And it's not just a different plan, it's a completely separate instance. Think of it as its own isolated bubble. And because it's separate, it has its own unique endpoints.
So what on earth is an endpoint? Let's just break that down real quick. The easiest way to think about it is like a digital street address. If the regular public Azure service is at 123 Main Street, Azure Government is in a high-security facility over at 456 Government Plaza. If you send your connector to the wrong address, it's just never going to find the service. It's really that simple.
And that leads us directly to the solution. The most important thing to realize here is that we can't just rely on the connector's default settings. We have to step in and manually give it the right addresses, the specific endpoints for Azure Government. And as it turns out, there are two key addresses it needs to know.
So what are these two magic addresses? Well, here they are. These are the two attributes you're going to need to configure. First up, you've got MS Graph Resource Base. This one tells the connector where to find the actual API to, make the data calls. Then, second, you have MS Graph Token Base. This tells it where to go to get the authentication token. Think of that one like the security pass to get into the building. You absolutely have to have both for this to work. Okay, so how do you actually apply this fix? You'll do it by updating the source configuration using SailPoint's REST APIs. You're basically going to send an update command that includes these two key pieces of information. So just like it says here, you'll add the MS Graph Resource Base key and its value, and then you'll add the MS Graph Token Base key and its value. So let's look at exactly what those values are. Okay, let's zoom in on the first one you need. The key is MS Graph Resource Base. The value that you have to provide for Azure Government is https:/graph.microsoft.us. I want you to pay close attention to the .us at the end. That's the magic bit. That little detail is what directs the traffic away from the public cloud and points it straight to the US government instance. And here's the second piece of the puzzle. The key for this one is MS Graph Token Base, and its value is https:/loginmicrosoftonline.us. And again, you see that .us domain? Super important. This is the totally separate address for the authentication service. Without this, your connector might find the right building, but it wouldn't have the key to open the front door.
All right, let's just do a quick recap of the whole fix. At its heart, the problem is simple. Azure Government is a separate world, and it needs unique addresses, or endpoints. Your standard connector isn't going to find it on its own. The solution? You manually configure two attributes, MS Graph Resource Base for the API and MS Graph Token Base for the authentication. And you do that by updating the source with a REST API call. That's the whole thing in a nutshell.
And I want to leave you with this last and honestly most crucial piece of advice. While the values we talked about today are correct right now, you know how it is. Cloud services are always changing. So the absolute source of truth is always going to be the official Microsoft documentation. So what does that mean for you? It means now you don't just know how to fix this one problem, but you know exactly where to look if you're trying to connect to other special instances, like maybe Azure China, or if these values happen to change down the road. You're not just fixing a problem, you're future-proofing your knowledge.